Hello and welcome to the video tutorial on feudalism. In this video we're going to find out what feudalism is, when it happened, where it happened and why it took place. Perhaps there's a little clue in the background of this slide as to where it might have taken place. You should have your notebook by your side or your iPad ready for you to take notes on the video. Okay, so feudalism begins as the Christian kingdoms evolve through the 8th and 9th centuries, and a new form of government evolves with it. This system is based on three main things: political, economic, and social organization. The main features or characteristics of the feudal system developed during the 9th to the 11th centuries, although the system continued well into the 15th century in Europe. There are three main characteristics. Firstly, the kings lose power. Secondly, the economy becomes mainly based on agriculture or the cultivation of land. And thirdly, the social organization becomes dependent. What I mean is that there are dependent relationships between different classes of people. As you can see in these pictures, there's a nobleman kneeling down before a king. The noble is dependent on the king in some way. And in this picture, you see a noble or a person with more authority over the workers in the field. They're working in farming because we can see this tool here, which is called a scythe. They're cutting down the crops for harvest. Now that you have a bit of an idea what feudalism is, a loss of power of the kings in politics, an economy based on the cultivation of land, and a social organization with dependent relationships, you might wonder what led to feudalism. Why did it happen? And why now, in the 9th century? Well, the answer is instability. Huge instability in the Christian kingdoms for two main reasons, which we'll see on the next slide. Well, hopefully you remember Charlemagne. Charlemagne became emperor on Christmas Day in the year 800. And well, when he died in 814, his successors found it very difficult to decide who should rule. After Charlemagne, his son, Louis the Pious, took over. And it was when he died that things really became chaotic. Louis the Pious had three sons: Lothair, Charles the Bold, and Louis the German. Unfortunately, they could not decide who should take over as emperor, and so they end up dividing Charlemagne's kingdom into three parts. Charles the Bold governs this section in the east, Lothair the central section, and Louis German in the west. This division of the territory was decided in the Treaty of Verdun of 843. Well, perhaps you can think of a few of the consequences of this treaty. Obviously, as the empire is now divided into three, there is no longer any central authority. It means that there's not just one person ruling all the territory, one person to look to make decisions. There are now three different people ruling in three different areas. Also, the kings lose power because there's no longer one all-powerful leader, just like Charlemagne was. Hopefully you remember at the beginning of the tutorial, one of the key characteristics or features of feudalism was that the kings lost power, and this comes from this situation with Charlemagne's descendants. The second factor that led to huge instability at this time, which allowed for feudalism to be created, were invasions. As you can see from the map, the Muslims were invading from North Africa in the south. A group called the Magyars were invading from the east, which is where Hungary is nowadays, and the Vikings were invading from the north. All of this caused huge instability because the central part of Europe was being attacked. So what happens now? The people in the three kingdoms ruled by Charlemagne's grandsons are being attacked by Muslims, Magyars, and Vikings. Well, the kings end up being unable to protect the people or their land because there are so many invasions. So the kings turn to some nobles who are rich and powerful in the area and ask them for help. This help they want is defense and protection from the attackers. The nobles agree in exchange for land. On the other hand, you have the peasants, the poor people. They too ask the nobles for help and protection because they're being attacked. And in exchange, the peasants give the nobles their land and they work for them. So what are the consequences? Hopefully you can see. The nobles end up with lots of land. And there are dependent relationships, which we mentioned at the beginning as one of the key characteristics of feudalism. And this is the beginning of what is known as the lord-vassal relationship. In this image, the man here who is higher up would be the lord, and this fellow kneeling down would be the vassal. It's like his servant. The lord-vassal relationship can be between a king and a nobleman, in which case the king would be the lord and the nobleman would be the vassal, because although he is of a high social class, he is putting himself in a situation that makes him inferior to the king. The noble will swear loyalty and give the king protection, and the king in return will give the noble some land. Each lord-vassal relationship will be slightly different, but it's always based on one person being of a higher social class or having more power than the other. And it is a key feature of the feudal system. Okay, so we have seen a lot of information in this tutorial, so let's review very quickly. We've learned that feudalism arose out of the Christian kingdoms in the 9th century due to instability. This instability was caused by two main factors. Perhaps you can remember. If you can, great. If you can't, look in your notebook. Pause the video and try and look in your notebook so you learn as we go. The first factor was the Treaty of Verdun, which was the division of Charlemagne's empire into three parts by his grandsons because they couldn't decide who should ultimately rule. Those grandsons were Lothair, Charles the Bold, and Louis the German. And the second factor was the invasions by groups of people such as the Muslims, the Magyars, and, does anyone remember from the north? The Vikings. These invasions cause extra instability in Europe because the kings have already lost power due to the Treaty of Verdun, and now the kings are not able to protect their people. For this reason, the kings turn to the nobles, and the nobles protect the kings in exchange for land. At the same time, the peasants ask the nobles for help too, and in exchange, the peasants give the nobles land. All of these things lead to the changes we discussed at the beginning of the video. Political change, where the kings have less power. Economic change, where the economy is based mainly on agriculture and land. And the social organization change of dependent relationships, such as the lord and the vassal. Thank you for watching this video tutorial. I hope it has been useful, and good luck in our mini test.